screen to start streaming without being seen.
What do you mean?
Like with the transition thing. Oh no,
Okay.
we're on already. Let's go.
Well, we're live already.
Yeah, we're live already. But
Okay. Well, are you sure? I haven't even got a notification.
Well, we're just gonna sit here and stare at a screen for a little while then.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what I did and why we're already live?
Well, what did you do?
Because last week, and I normally don't do it, is I transitioned out of the show and went to the title screen, when normally I just end the stream when it's still our two beautiful faces. And then I went, because I put it to that studio mode, right? And then I looked at it this time and was like, oh, I have to click transition to take it back to the title screen. Nah, it was already on the title screen. So now when I click start streaming, everybody's seen our beautiful faces from the very beginning, and we've probably got like all of nobody watching at this stage, hence why I'm killing time talking crap before EG does a proper introduction. So
Okay. Right. Well, we've got actually that's one of the guys. One of the guys that we were suggested to get on is watching. Mark Martin.
yeah, Mark, when are you available? EG's been crap with getting
I've been trying.
well, he should tell me to message some people then.
Okay. Well,
I'm just gonna put shit on you. All right.
Yeah, that's all right. I didn't get a guess, so I did fail.
Yeah,
so that's fine.
You did, mate. We're gonna basically have to sack you.
Okay, get a better host.
Well, I'm already here, but I don't even know how to get this to come up with comments. I don't know. All right. Well, we're not winning tonight. I don't think EG's winning this week. So you're boring. Nah, mate. We're more than happy to have some boring old dude from the butt crack of South Australia come on.
As if he's boring. He went to Japan. I think he even went to ADGP or World Time Attack one year.
No,
I can't remember.
No, we had this conversation. I think you're thinking of somebody different. No.
No, I'm sure I think it was ADGP, like Australia Day or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if he puts anything in the comments, but he's probably like, this Asian dude's full of shit.
No, well, it's someone, same car row, or that car.
There's been lots of dudes who have painted taxis.
Yeah, they actually had taxi livery on it.
Yeah, there's been a few. Nah, it's not him. He said in the comments, no.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure he's flattered that you think that he's been to World Time Attack like you have, but yeah, sadly not. So what are we at? This is episode 3 for 2019.
Yeah, 3? Is it 3?
I think we're 3.
Yeah, it's like, it'll be the third one. Yeah, okay.
This is the third one.
So this is roughly when we probably started.
Nah,
I think like actually no.
Nah, we were later than this.
Okay.
So, and we're still just as disorganized.
Yeah. You know who else? That I want to get on is Matt Harvey. I think he just joined as well. Joined the stream.
Yeah, well, Matt Harvey told me he'd get back to me, but that was a couple of months ago. But he's been too busy playing Assetto Corsa, I see, and making videos with people on Assetto Corsa to come on and have a chat. So.
Oh yeah, is that there was I saw a post. It was
Wayne's post.
Aussie post, but Aussie, it was
Aussie Drift Co or whatever it is.
Yeah,
virtual, that's Wayne.
They had a competition. Last weekend or something like that.
Yeah, that's Wayne.
I joined the stream, but it was like kind of like other Australian competitions, and there was nothing happening at the time. But that's all right. It's good. It's happening, so that's all right. I just there wasn't much happening at the time, and I couldn't. I don't even think I even had sound on, so if there was commentators, then I didn't hear it. But yeah, I did see that. That's really cool. I think it'd be interesting. I wonder how they actually did that, like, and how.
I think I think they're just
Yeah.
doing call outs for fun. I think you can go back and rewatch the stream, but they've got a Discord channel, and they're also doing some car packs and map packs and some Aussie cars and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure being remodeled and yeah. So I will.
Yeah, we see like if we get the like actual car drifters, because there's people out there that only play VR or through video game.
No, there was a few
And
guys on there because Troy Lipshinsky
yeah.
is in there doing it as well. So
No, I mean I'm saying that there's some guys that are like not driving real cars
are you
and
donating?
competing. No, I'm not donating, but I'm interested in how they stack up against those guys that actually do drive in competitions. So the comparison, and also how the guys that do compete, if how they go against each other in that sort of competition. Wasn't interesting.
I apologize, Jai, for playing with your feelings. Yeah, I'd be interested to get somebody who's never or can drive manual in real life and maybe done a skid here or there, but yeah, chuck them in a car and be like, let's see what you can do straight away. Just finding a car that works, not mine.
I haven't fixed mine yet.
I haven't fixed mine either, so.
So welcome to the Clutch Kick. This is episode 3 of 2019. I'm one of your hosts, EG, and on the left or right of me is Greg Merriman, former Olympic ice skater, champion, something.
Slash
Always, I can't see those medals behind you in this view.
slash
But...
fat and lazy.
So tonight, I again wasn't able to secure a guest, but I did. I did message people, and it seems like we will have some potential guests.
Yeah, when people tell you that they're interested in coming on, make sure that they're like, this is when I can actually come on. Don't like shit. Like, yeah, because Instagram's gone a bit quiet too without having guests.
Photos.
So yeah, well, I don't know. So we figured we'd just talk shit again, and yeah, if people have questions and topics they want covered that we don't need other people for, or anything drifting related that we can sort of help cover, then ask them in the comments as we go. So I guess we figured we'd start. Well, there's not really any news.
Come on.
Well, the Toyota, the new Toyota Supra came out.
Yeah. And what do you think about it?
I don't mind it.
You were disappointed that there was no one running a new Supra in the FD this season.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I wish somebody was running it this season. I already thought with how quickly the turnaround was done with the Corolla IM for Papadakis Racing in 2 seasons ago, I thought maybe there'd be a chance that they would be given one and asked to run it, considering I think they get a lot of money from Toyota Racing in the States, but they've already come out and confirmed that they won't be running that car next season. So I'm not sure at this stage anybody will be running it. And somebody sort of questioned whether or not Ken Gucci will be in it, and he said he loves his 86. So they're Toyota Racing backed, but I don't think they're as got as much money coming in as the Papadakis Racing program. So yeah, I can't see.
Do you think they'll do an engine swap if they do run a Supra?
So I saw some stuff floating around the net today saying that it's already got holes in place for the engine mounts for a 2J.
What?
Yeah, supposedly, like I don't know if it's only the four-cylinder version because there's a couple of different
Okay.
motored versions, but
Yeah.
yeah, supposedly it's been confirmed by Toyota itself that there is, yeah, there's already, or marketing people that there's already holes, uh, yeah, in the in the front subframe to go straight to a 2J. So
That's really weird.
yeah,
Because to me, like one of the comments, it looks like a BMW mashed with a back of an 86 mashed with a Ferrari, and
well, but it look, it's the original concept, but they've sort of squished it. Well, no, they've just sort of squished it a little bit, so everything's sort of a little bit shorter and a little bit taller. If you go back and look at the original,
I, the concept looks cool, but
yeah,
this is like
I've got pictures of the concept in person from the Detroit Auto Show. Fuck, 2014 probably.
that long ago. Okay.
Yeah, 2014 or 2013. So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think it looks okay. I would imagine that it'll be funny when the first few aftermarket body kits start to come out. They're probably going to be less aggressive than the factory one. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see. But I would imagine that unless some rich dude buys one and builds one, that there will probably be a couple in FD 2020. I would imagine.
But they're not that expensive, and I think like the 86, I think they would actually do like a shell only or like a race delivered car, if that makes sense. So you could actually
Yeah, where
put
it's just
a
the
or a V8 in it.
well, yeah, like the race delivered ones where it basically comes on stocky, like on some sort of cheap stocky wheel with
Yeah.
basically nothing done to it.
Yep.
Uh, maybe. Uh, so yeah, I'm not sure Osbo like Steve Dawn saying that Osbo will have one for sure. Papadakis Racing has said no, and you'd think that they'd be pushing for it to come out, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe Papadakis Racing has said that they don't want to try and do that R&D that quickly because my understanding for them was that the change from the Scion TC to the Corolla wasn't a big change, and they were able to adapt all the knuckles and stuff that they had made and made it work already. Like it was easy for them to make work. Where for this one, it's probably going to be a little bit more. Uh, might be a little bit more work to get a steering lock set up that works. And I think the fact that they won a championship in no, they've been second or third 2 years in a row, and that was the season after they've gone to the Corolla. It was competitive straight away. Yeah, but I'm not sure who else would have the sort of money and the backing to run the program like that. Because I know Ken's program isn't nearly as uh, high end, I guess you could say, in regards to full-time employees working on the car and all that. Where Papadakis could pull it off because that's their job. That's what they do is just that car. So, or pretty much just that car. So, yeah, we'll see what
I, gue-
happens.
I guess there really isn't that much reason for those guys to actually change into the Supra, because the only reason I think you'd run a Supra is to get the popularity from being like the first, or you're trying to make an impression to begin with. I don't think you'd actually would run or change from something like an 86, which is still current. They're still selling 86s, and move on to like a Supra unless you needed that promotion boost.
Yeah, and I think for them it was sort of the Supra's going to sort of sell itself a little bit more because it's had hype behind it. It's been a long-term thing, and it'll probably be pushed into GT racing of some variety where the Corolla IM needed help, I guess, because in and you got to remember each of these are sort of a regionalized. Somebody might show up in D1 with one. We're talking about FD, But the
Yeah.
reality is that marketing in Japan might want to use one, or over in Europe, BMW might be trying to push people into it. But in the US, I think after the collapse of Scion as the cool brand of Toyota, uh, they were trying to push people into staying into their small compacts and making it trendy. So by putting a Corolla out there drifting made it kind of trendy, I guess, but don't know how trendy you'd say it actually is. But you know what I mean? You put big wheels on it, flares, all this sort of stuff, and it looks cool. So some young people will be like, "Oh yeah, it looks cool. I should get one of them." Uh, whereas the Super it's already there. It's already cool. So
Yeah.
how much are they? I haven't actually looked at
See, I
pricing.
can't I can't see a confirmed figure for Australia. So it sounds like there's a Japan only model, which is like a 4 cylinder, and then they're not going to export that to any other country. And that starts at about 50,000 Australian, I think. Could be US, I don't know. And then I think the export models are all going to be a 6 cylinder, but I don't think they're turbo, and they start at 70, and it goes up to just below 100 for the turbo.
Yeah,
But that's all on, like, I guess. I think people are still speculating. The price hasn't been confirmed for Australia yet. There's nothing on the Toyota website here.
yeah, no, dollar sucks
In terms
currently,
of,
so
yeah. Yeah, Australian dollar's really bad.
so I look, I can't imagine there's going to be a whole bunch of people driving them around in Australia straight away. But yeah, I think at this stage there probably won't be one in FD unless somebody falls on top of one. But it's too close to start of the season. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if we saw one in D1, but I'm not sure how many guys are factory backed by Toyota over there, or if Toyota's even all that interested in. But the other thing is Toyota Racing itself, after speaking to Ken at Cash Kings last year, is super serious about winning championships. So for them, they probably went and spoke to well, not to manufacturers, to teams, and I would imagine when they a couple of years ago went to Papadakis Racing and said we want to give you this Corolla, Stefan was probably like, okay, we can make this work. It's really similar to the TC, so we can just sort of modify a few bits and pieces and swap it over. And it worked for them straight out of the box and still is a very good car. Or 2 years in a row they've rebuilt, because that's a completely different shell to the first season's one. Uh, and then I would imagine that the fact that originally when they were gonna leave the TC, they were going to go to an 8.6, but it has a whole bunch of aftermarket support already because Ken had been campaigning for a few years in that car. So I would imagine this new Super is probably going to be a little bit of time for people to get their hands on it and then have a look at it and then see what needs to be done to make bits and pieces work, or if Wisefab can only slightly modify stuff that they've already got for the 8.6 to work, or if it's I haven't looked that closely into what the front end setups are in them, double wishbone or McPherson's or anything like that. So, I'm sure all those guys will have been able to see it, but uh, all that sort of stuff comes into play when you're talking about trying to be successful straight out of the box. So,
Yeah, I saw the suspension set up in a video for the new Supra, but I can't actually remember what it was.
yeah.
I don't think it's too dissimilar to, like, it's not something revolutionary.
Yeah,
So,
but it's still with the short turnover for coming into the Northern Hemisphere summer and the drift season. It's a pretty short turnover to try and get a car that actually works, and then it not costing you a packet. And then if yeah, Toyota Racing isn't going to get their premier team in the US to risk a new car when they're in championship contention like they've been the last couple of years already. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Um, and looks wise, yeah, we'll see what happens with it. people are going to do all sorts of cool stuff. There's been people doing renderings with it with big wheels and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and that already makes
Photoshop was good.
yeah, and it
Yeah,
already makes it look cooler than what it does from factory. It's amazing. When the 86 concept came out, and then when the real car came out, and it came in on the really crappy little stock wheels, but I think Toyota sort of figured let's put it on these crappy wheels because the chances are they're all going to end up on buddy Craigslist, Gumtree, eBay or just used for skidders because everybody's going to go out and buy different rims anyway. So I think
yeah,
that sort of they did whatever they needed to do to comply with probably a wider international uh, governing bodies with tire size and tire spec and rim size and rim spec, and sort of leave it to the owner's decision to make those changes. Um, somebody's commented, oh, Matt Harvey commented, did we see the Audi at Tokyo Auto Salon for that's doing FD? Yeah, I saw that. I think I sent it to the group chat
yeah.
with the big V8. Yeah, that's cool. Very cool car.
Yeah.
Very cool build.
I
I don't.
only looked at the first photo. I didn't actually click through the
Why
album.
didn't you? It's like
Nah,
so like a
I should
full.
have a look.
That's like a full front end clip thing. Big V8. Well, I'm pretty sure it's a V8 from what I remember seeing. It was funny. On Maximum Driftcast podcast a couple of years ago, there was a driver that had gone to them to Audi directly to have a chat to them, and they're very interested in drifting, but to use it to showcase their technology. So basically, unless drifting becomes an all-wheel drive sport, then they're not all that interested because they want to use, the Quattro technology as their big selling point. And yeah, at this stage, they're not all that interested. But it'll be interesting to see if these guys do well, if that'll pique their interest a little bit. There's also a guy in the US who drives Pro-Am in Texas with an S14 that has been building an Audi for a while, and I'm not sure at what point it's going to come out. But so there are a few people using that chassis, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it performs. And I was also surprised that it's being used for FD rather than D1. So if that's a little bit of a changing of the tides over there and sort of a bit of a trend, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I know. It sounds. I'm not too sure, but maybe what Kumakura posted a few months ago had some influence with people because he is like a prominent figure in drifting in Japan. So maybe that sort of post coming from him has actually changed people's views and opinions about FD, even if it's FD Japan, not FD America.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people already know that FD Japan is run by Japanese, like what's
MSC.
MSC, yeah. So, which was always a lower tier of competition compared to D1. But I guess what they can do with FD Japan is use it as a stepping stone to get into FD America, and because from the looks of it, because I don't know, it looks like it is a driver could be more successful and maintain sort of like a job as a drifter than having to work two jobs or something unrelated to cars, and they can spend more time drifting if they actually progress through into that sort of competition.
Well, but do you also think the fact that when you learn to drift and then decide to go competitive, that the format that FD is still using is what you learn and what you are accustomed to, and what D1 is using is they haven't used the technology and tried to feed it down into feeder series. Even if they were to give a dumbed down version of DOS, or give them a system of DOS that does 50% using DOS and 50% using real judge, real judges, or using DOS for their qualifying at some of those lower ranked competitions to try and pique that interest and keep that interest in D1 from a driver's point of view, because that'll be what kills the sport. The fans will keep going to what they know, but if you don't have the support of the drivers are going to go to what they know, and what they know now is, well, what they've always known is that FD is still using the traditional, or NMSC is still using the traditional system. But it also seems like from some of the stuff I'm seeing online that there's been a little bit of a resurgence of your grassroots competitions over in Japan. Or, and when I say resurgence, I mean that some of the grassroots or more traditional style competitions are starting to get bigger numbers and stuff again. I saw some stuff from Nakamura driving recently and in the last sort of 6 months or so, where he was doing some comps and a few other things that are using that traditional system. So I think people are just more interested in still using, having that I guess a to me, I still get a better understanding from what being able to pick a judge's brain to what they want, as opposed to what DOS is actually looking for. So, and I think even the drivers are
Mm,
probably finding that. So that's either going to be up to D1 to be more transparent with it, or D1 trying to feed DOS down into non-pro stuff so that it becomes more normal. And then
yeah.
as you get better at the sport, you look for what's normal, and to you the normal is using a computer judging system where if your normal is three judges making a call, and you accept the good, bad, and the ugly decisions, then you're just going to keep following that sort of system the whole way through your driving. So
Yeah, so that's what I thought they would do eventually, because I know I can understand you introduce it and then you have to expand it, otherwise it doesn't work. Like, um, people won't get knowledge about it, and when they come into a competition, they'll drive they'll drive in a way that they think is right, and they won't have any sort of experience,
yeah,
and it just makes it look bad for the spectators. But just getting back to like an earlier point that you brought up, the spectators at D1, there's more spectators at D1 than there are at FD
well
generally.
that's what I'm saying. Like the spectators
Yeah,
go to what they know, and what the spectators currently know is D1. You go
yeah,
like you don't
uh,
necessarily go to attend event because of what the judging system is or whatever. Like people will go to, it's easy for me to use that as an example, a figure skating event, whether it's a show or a competition, if it's accessible to them because it's close to home at the arena that they know. So
yeah,
for most people, if they're like, oh, I love drifting, I want to go watch drifting, um, you're like, okay, when's D1 on? I know D1, so I'm going to look up D1. If they've never heard of Formula Drift because they've never been exposed to it, because what they know is D1, they're not going to go and search, drift events in Japan. They're going to look up D1 because they enjoyed their experience with D1. This is like me talking from, your casual viewers, or and your
yeah.
and your diehards will also, stick to what they know a little bit more. Uh,
I think diehards would go to both if they have the opportunity and they can
yeah,
afford
yeah.
to watch both. Diehards would go
But
there.
I'm saying your diehard D1 fans will continue going to D1 because they'll know
Yeah,
those drivers.
definitely.
Unless their chosen driver moves over to the other series,
Yeah.
and those decisions sort of get swayed a little bit. So
Yeah, it's interesting. In regards to the DOS sort of thing, I kind of wonder. I think having DOS would be good in conjunction with human judges, but I think the reason why DOS exists is because people think it's unfair and there's bias.
oh no, I don't
And
I don't question the sort of the validity of actually running a DOS style system. Like I don't think there's any drama with that. But when you've learnt a system, you sort of stick with that system. And if it's not the mainstream system, which it's not, it's run in one competition in the world. Like that's it's the only competition that runs it. And then when they do D1 versus uh, D1 versus RDS. I think they run it, but that's
Yeah.
it. And there is differences because when you're driving under a judge system, and yeah, it's changed over the last few years as to what the expectations are. Is the driving doesn't have to be super smooth, but you're trying to hold that line that you've been asked to do, where the DOS system asks for a more smooth and snappy style of driving, but not so heavy on where you are on track necessarily. Yeah, a little
Mm.
bit, but not as heavy as what your traditional judging system now expects. Like, yes, back when that started, people were using racing line, like using the traditional racing line and all that sort of stuff. But most of that's now gone from most, and I say most, but there are still some weird ones out there. But most are trying to, encourage a chase car to be able to get close. Uh,
Yeah, that's a good point, but I'll so I think we'll talk about D1NZ as well,
yeah.
and I want to bring up a run or a
Well, don't bring it up just
maybe a
yet.
particular
We'll go
particular
back to
competitor, and refer it to this DOS, like
yeah,
if there was DOS and if there was
yeah,
that sort of
yeah.
situation, how would the outcome change, or do you think it'd be the same? But that's we'll come to that a bit later on, I think.
And and I guess following on from some of these points as well, like thinking back to that video I watched, that I think it was up on Nakamura's Facebook page and Instagram, and him, just his ability to really jump up on somebody's door. But that also comes from when he's driving and practicing with the other burst drivers. Is they're driving When you're driving in a group like that, you drive to a preset line, not necessarily set by a judge, but by your peers. Like you're like, okay, I'm going to run the wide line so you can jump in on me. And then now at most competitions around the world, it's like the judges set this wide line for that exact reason. But then a system like your DOS doesn't mandate that. They just want smooth, aggressive driving throughout, which then takes away some of that ability from the chase driver to be able to predict like that. So I'd love to see
Yeah,
somebody like a Nakamura. He'd probably make it work, but it's probably wouldn't be as clean and as
but
smooth as what he does on a traditional under a traditional judging system, I would imagine.
it
Like,
it's funny you bring up Nakamura because I don't think it really matters.
no, and that
Line
is,
because
yeah.
you look at him at all time attack when
But there's still an
uh,
expected
the,
there's still an expected judging line at that stage. So I'd just
I
love to see it under a
yeah,
system without an expected judging line per se.
I get you. But the idea with DOS and why there isn't a set line is because there's so much other criteria that it pushes them
Oh,
to same line supposedly. So it's like uh when there's like a silhouette, so you can't see what it is, but everything there's an outline of every other criteria. You can actually you can figure out what it's meant to be, and that's the idea of DOS. So they don't need to set a line. They just set the criteria so the line um, is
well,
created.
the criteria is already preset. Like they're looking for the
Yeah,
fastest, snappiest, smoothest, all that, and then they're basically just setting a course. So
yeah,
um, that
and
and which means that never changes. So there's no, I guess they're changing the weighting of sections and stuff like that. But I think most of the sections are a predetermined like percentage, and then they're sort of told that. Where I know some series that judge sort of tell their tell their drivers how they're going to weight the course, because at some courses, say Wakeford for example, there's going to be separation at the end. So some series will tell their drivers, we're going to heavily weight the start, and the ending we'd like to see you close, but if worse comes to worse, you know, separation, it's not going to weigh that heavily. And others will say things like that, or not worry about it at all, and then basically just go equal across the board. But that, yeah, that doesn't sit all that great for me. Um,
also the grassroots versus pro thing. I think it's always been grassroots is where the skill sits at normally in Japan. So they always sort of said the cool driving's in D1 SL when it used to exist, but then the professional driving is in like where you would potentially earn more money, like you'd actually earn money, or you might get backing for is in D1 GP.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But if you're looking to grow and expand, you're gonna follow what's,
yeah,
I want to be successful and put my name out there, then I'm really good under the traditional judging system and I want to do well in competition, you're probably going to follow a series that does traditional judging, unless you've got some sort of deal that you can make good money from, and you go and chase the job that would be the other series, for example, rather than where you feel like you can be most successful. But all that comes down to goals, dreams, aspirations, what your sponsors want, what your program is able to do, all that
hmm.
sort of stuff. So
Yeah,
there's so many variables to that side of it. But if you're going to follow a more natural progression, you sort of stick to what you know. So humans don't like change. So
no,
we're bad at change, which is probably
yeah.
what hurt D1 a little bit too. But I also don't think that they did enough to.
Oh, they're even worse at Japanese are really bad at cultural change. So
So they probably should have just.
technological, they seem to be pretty good, but cultural, no, they're so stuck in their ways, which is good and bad. It means it's consistency, but also means it's difficult and there's no growth.
Yeah, and really, when you're going to make a significant change like that at the top, you've got to try and feed it down very quickly. And
Yeah,
they just there's been no action, and I think part of that's them being scared that people are going to steal their technology and all that. Well, if they don't stick around, their technology is worth zero. So uh, yeah, so I thought that was interesting, and that was, yeah, back to the Audi. Just interesting that that was being built for FD rather than D1.
I,
So
I think it's good. I think it's a good wake up call for D1. So they need to actually start to make changes. And I actually, well, I haven't looked yet, but normally D1 announce their dates for the year and like a new website. But I haven't looked, and I probably should look. But I don't think I've heard any sort of people talking about it.
that's very interesting you say that, because yeah, I'll have a quick look. Do you know another event that hasn't released dates that normally has dates out this early now?
We spoke about a few, but which one, which event are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about one that's been in Sydney since
Okay.
before a certain track closed down. Uh, so World Time Attack Challenge dates haven't been set for this season, and last year the dates were out basically um, as soon as the event was finished in
Yeah.
2017, and this year there's been nothing. We're already at the start of the year, and there's been nothing announced. So I have heard some whispers.
Yeah.
I don't want to say too much, um, but I would imagine at this stage, unless they're relocating or rebranding or doing something, that we might be one short on the event this year, unless somebody comes out of the woodwork and makes something happen, which is a bit upsetting. And if some of the stuff we've heard is true, it'd be nice for a proper media release, so that people who are building cars, going a little bit crazy, building drift cars, building time attack cars, doing anything like that, actually aren't going too crazy and building stuff that isn't all that relevant in their chosen disciplines, or they're spending too much money thinking that that's what they need. Because I guess if you build a crazy drift car now, the only place to drive it is high tech, and the tracks that they're going to this year don't really call for the sort of power that you need at a track like Sydney Motorsport Park. So
You
they're all,
reckon?
yeah, they're all pretty technical. Well, other than the drag race doing the FD layout at Calder Park, unless you can get a shitload of mechanical grip out of your car, um, then that sort of, your 1,000 horsepower or your 800 horsepower is sort of redundant on most of those tracks, because from what my understanding is, they'll run FD layout at Calder Park, and
Yep.
that's not a big power track. Um, Queensland Raceway running the back, the S's.
Yeah,
Turn 3 through
but
6. That's not a big power track.
but that's an opening. Like the radius is increasing on that one.
Yeah, but only for that.
So
But for that, only that really short for that short amount of time, and then there's that big checkup through that that to me it's fairly narrow between the link road and turn 6. You've got to really check the car up, and then you're on power. But again, that turns into more of a sideways drag race, and that more comes down to your timing and how well you set the car in the corner more than how much power you've got.
nah, it's definitely power. Like the more power you get, the more legs you have, and you can. It's an
Yeah,
opening radius. It's not like if it was a closing one, then you'd compress the cars. But as soon as you switch, and then they're just going to spread out. And they're going to spread out more and more if there's a power difference. Even if there wasn't a power difference, it's exactly the same cars. You'll see a difference because um, the radius is opening, so it's just natural for it to widen. Same
yeah,
skill, same whatever. It's
yeah,
everything the same.
but
It should open.
yeah, but it sort of opens and closes between the corners,
Switch
like
it.
yeah, rather than it's a circuit racing setup, so it's more about slow into the corner, fast out of the corner, rather than drifting that should be fast into the corner, slow out of the corner to create a tight battle.
Fast in, fast out.
Oh yeah, or fast in, but yeah. But for drifting, I took on board what you had said like many episodes ago, being like that. Um, a drift course should be a slowing course, like not on one corner, but over multiple corners. It should be sort of decreasing in speed rather than increasing in speed because
Well,
it becomes
there needs to
horsepower
be
war.
like
So that's at that stage.
compression zones, yeah,
Yeah,
where they squash up and then they can split apart. Like you can have. It doesn't mean like constantly you come in fast and you get slow and slow. So it's like you're going fast and then you slow up and then it might expand again, but then you compress again. And,
yeah. As long as it
yeah.
recompresses again for the last part. So, um, having a look at the D1 GP site, they've got one event announced, and that's it. And
Oh,
it's
this year.
yeah, well, so far, uh, D1 GP All Star Shootout on the 23rd and 24th of March at Odaiba.
Maybe
And
they're another one that's sort of going away, possibly.
honestly, maybe, but I think they still have the World Championships for next year. Um, but then Odaiba's also is gone after this year or at some stage this year because it's being redeveloped for Tokyo 2020 Olympics.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that car park will be no longer. So I wonder
Yeah,
if,
they're doing a lot of changes in Tokyo for that event.
yeah, massive. That's what places do. They use it for that. So yeah, they haven't done any changes for 2018 in regards to China or Japan just yet. So there's nothing on their website. So
Maybe it's too soon. Maybe they're still planning.
uh, so yeah, in the comments, yeah, what I was referring to is not saying that for for the tracks that High will be running, you don't need the sort of horsepower, and it doesn't have the maintained speed that you need to turn that much grip that you would run at Sydney Motorsport Park. So, entering in third and then dropping back to second, then back up into to third for the last corner or holding third the whole way isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking fourth gear pinned and absolutely blazing the crap out of the tyres. The only place is if Queensland they do turn two or turn one, turn two for a competition, but I'm not sure that's necessarily going to happen. And Calder Park, I don't think anything's as wide and as open uh, as that. So
Calder Park, I don't mind. I don't mind that course because a course that I suggested when I first saw ADGP running there. So, I thought it should be run that way.
But they didn't D1 have to lay concrete or do something? But I'm not sure what FD. Did I say D1? I meant FD. Um, didn't FD have to lay concrete or move a wall or do something to get that layout happening?
Oh, so what were you talking about?
So that layout that you're talking about, the FD layout at Calder Park,
Yeah,
supposedly when FD came, like, because FD Asia was the first series to run that layout,
yeah.
that they had to lay concrete or do some modifications or something like that. So
I don't think so.
I don't know. All I remember is
They just use
what I read on the internet must be true.
They just use the gap in the on
Was it
the
an existing
on,
gap?
well, yeah, because the reason why there was forced chicanes for ADGP was because there were gaps in the
It's in the
wall, and
walls.
so they put barriers out like in a curve shape,
Yeah, in an
so you
arc.
could sort of clip into the walls, and it pushed you away from the gaps.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was funny when ADGP was coming around. I was saying that we won't do Scando entries, we won't do whatever. But then the very first round, first event, the Scando entry. Just yeah.
Yeah. What was that? Wasn't only Scando for the lead car, and then the chase car was able to single flick underneath. I don't think anybody actually did that, but
I don't think so.
no. So everybody
Pretty
was.
sure they had to do it. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. So yeah, because then you can use. Then they ran it backwards, I guess. So you start on the flat and you go up onto the bank.
Yeah, onto the bank.
I think going from the bank as well would have been cooler. And they get that whole they can push the run up further back if they really wanted to, and get them flying in. And
Yeah. Well,
that's
that's
really cool.
provided they use it to keep the cars together.
Yeah.
And the rumor has it that that's what they'll run both times that they're down there. I would personally like to see. I don't know if you've ever seen the layout run. Between the front straight on the national circuit and the back straight on the national circuit, there's a link road in there.
Yeah, I remember that.
They run down the back straight backwards and into that link road backwards, and then transition um, down the front straight and then towards into the bowl. That's got a nice flowing first corner and probably one of the better layouts. Well, personally, I think that's one of the better layouts on the national circuit. It'd be cool to see them use that one. Yeah, I think logistically it's a little bit funnier because I think you've got to try and get the cars to transit back across the track at some stage, like back across the traffic. But it's also a good spectator area because you're up on the grass hill, and you can see a lot of the track from the grass hill. Where the Thunderdome really underwhelmed me when we were there as a spectator. Underwhelmed me when we were there for DCA. I really liked the DCA layout. Thought it was pretty fun. The FDE layout was okay, but yeah, as a spectator, that facility sucks. So
Yeah, especially when you can't go up into the bank to see it.
yeah, you can't go up onto the bank. There's only a certain amount of spectator space. You need to be in the front row to be able to see well.
Yeah.
And there isn't a whole bunch of front row section. So, and you also can't comfortably sit in a lawn chair and be able to see everything properly, or
No.
sit down and be able to see it properly. So that to me is a bit of a shame and a bit of a lost opportunity. But we'll see. Maybe they'll end up with a temporary stand or something down there. Maybe they'll bring their temporary stand down,
Oh yeah.
or have a couple of temporary stands. But I think
The stands are good. I like the stands that they bring around.
but just yeah, for viewing it's a little bit awkward because ideally that would be across the grass section that lines the finish corner. But I think you'd have to remove chain link fence to be able to set up stands there properly. So you sort of get where I mean.
Yeah.
Because if you
Yeah,
put
yeah, I know what you mean.
if you put it
Because
in
you
the
can't see it otherwise.
yeah, and if you
Yeah.
put it in the corner of the pits, how FD had it, I think the viewing supposedly for FD when they had all the temporary stands and all that sort of stuff was shocking, and you couldn't really see the run up. So we'll see what they do. But as back to my point, I just yeah, if people are building cars for all time attack at this stage and trying to get 800 horsepower, then at this stage, I'm not sure there's anywhere necessary you need it. If you've got that sort of car and you want to test it on big semis and go somewhere really fast, go down to that uh, invitational drift event down at the Bend in February because it's a more open tire rule and I think running the big layout. So you're looking at probably 170, 180 k an hour entries into a big sweeping fast corner. So that's probably the place to shake and bake that sort of car. So um, yeah, so let's sort of have a bit of a carry on about D1NZ.
Okay. You watched all of it, I think, and I only
Yeah,
watched
yeah,
about. I watched bits of the top 20, 24, I think it was, on a Sunday. I didn't
yeah,
actually. Yeah, I didn't see qualifying at all.
yeah. Pro Street, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to. I was doing some stuff, but I had it playing in the background. I, I'm not sure why they ran the layout the way they ran it. I thought it was a little bit odd. Um, I like the layout, but if it ran sort of the other way, just to try and slow down the lead car a little bit, I thought it would be better run coming in off the bank into the midsection and keep continuing on that right hand radius, and then only having one transition to come around into the teardrop, and then the slow transition out of the bowl, and then just into out of the teardrop, and then into a bake around the last corner, rather than
Yeah.
having the sort of semi weird sort of checkup coming into the teardrop, and then having to sort of resettle the car down, and then yeah, there tended to be a bit of a gap formed coming out of the teardrop, where the the lead car was able to uh, sort of, from what it looked like, the camera angles weren't great, but was probably just missing the dirt on the inside of the track. And then if the chase car was too close, they were tending to pop up on the dirt. And there was a lot of times that even the lead car was tapping the sort of the dirt mound on the inside of the track, going
Yeah.
back onto the first corner again. So I thought,
So, yeah. So for people that don't know, this course is a temporary course that they set up in a stadium. I'm not sure what type of stadium it is, and it was. I don't. Has it been run before?
yes, it
Because
was run.
I got it mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, it was run the year before. So the the concrete on the first corner was was left there for the 12 months. All they've done is they've laid it below the dirt level for the speedway, so they just cover it back up for with the dirt for speedway, and then the part that's in the grass is relayed. So
Okay.
um,
Yep. So it's a temporary sort of course around like a stadium sort of arena, and they've come in and they've added a center section, which is a teardrop sort of shape that you're talking about, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. And so they've got to come into this arena and do like an outside loop. It's kind of like Drift Masters, but only for one side of the bowl. And then you'd come into the infield and then go back out the bowl. Go back out the same way around the bowl. So you'd cross back onto your own path. And it's an interesting course because it's, to me, the run up was short, and it was like a constant radius first corner, and then there would be like to me, it was an awkward transition to get into that sort of first loop
back.
of the infield.
Yeah.
Yeah, and along with that, the concrete is temporary, so I don't even know how they've laid it. If it was slabs or they've actually like set concrete.
No, they've set concrete, and this one was better than a couple of years ago when they ran it on the indoor arena. It's good because it's actually inset into the grass, so the grass is pretty much level with the top of the concrete, so you're not getting, when you're getting your drop offs and stuff like that, it's not unsettling the car big time. There are a few times where cars dropped two wheels off in that section, and it didn't unsettle the car at all, which was ideal, because a couple of years ago when they did their first indoor one, and it was like a big lip, because they had to lay directly on top of the ground rather than being able to lay it in the ground. Uh, that that caused havoc a few times when, and they were running barriers around the outside, laid down barriers around the outside, and as soon as you'd come off, I think the concrete slab would have been like a good 100 mil at least, or 1500 mil thick,
Yeah, wow.
to try and make sure it's, will hold the car, but also meant that there was a big step off, and yeah, you weren't really recovering from that. So yeah, I
It
thought,
did look a little bit bumpy, but
oh, that's
it
to be
didn't
expected.
look it didn't look like horrendous. So it wasn't like a smooth sort of thing like a normal circuit, but yeah.
But even figure eight being the corrugated, well, not corrugated, but the slabs of uh, the the slabs of concrete ends up creating that.
It looked really similar.
Yeah, it is, but I think that track's a little bit faster through that first corner. I would be interested to see it drifted the other like not the other direction, but going the opposite way through the teardrop. I think that would make for it being a little bit more interesting. I would imagine that there's potentially, why it was run that way is potentially to not have the cars coming towards the inside of the field and towards where the cars are actually coming in and staging and where people are so quickly. So if you sort of came through the first corner and you stayed on it as you entered in there, when you transition back to start coming around the teardrop, you're coming in a whole lot faster than the way they've got the cars slowing down and transitioning to go through the teardrop the other direction. So I would imagine potentially that there's some stuff like that potentially stopping them from running it that direction.
Yeah. Okay.
What did you like? What did you think like of running it that direction that they were?
I wasn't really a big fan of the entry, but I can understand if that was the reasoning to slow the cars down, I can see that, because it means that they won't like fly off the track if they miss the transition. And there's not really any sort of advantage, I think, running the sort of I guess the squiggly part back out, because all that's going to happen is they're going to compress there, and then it's a big blaze out the back anyway. So there would probably be separation unless you were cutting the course that you have power difference.
But you could sort of, through that switchback, you make it an outside line through the switchback, and then you've got to get all the way back out to the wall really early, and that also means that the chase car could sort of straighten up a little bit, and cut underneath to really flick and jump on door for the last corner. Either way, it's going to be a big power skid out of it, but I just think you could do some things. It's going to be very slow for the lead car at that stage, looking at the track, but yeah, you could really open the door for the chase car to jump on at that stage. I thought overall battles were tighter than I thought they might end up on that layout. It just was, that little awkward transition leading into the teardrop section was just a little bit funky a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think I actually expected a bit better for the competition personally, because the cars they look really good. But I don't think they were set up right. The course to me was more of an FD style course, and sort of like like many of the FD courses, it's a big bowl, so there's a big sweeper,
but not nearly as fast as FD is.
Yeah, but it's not so much the speed; it's more that you're pretty much on lock, and you pretty much have angle, and the angle is determined by how you set up the front end. So you can just blaze. So if you have Wisefab where you can have lots of angle and it still drive sideways, then you would look like you're mega sideways, but it's just a normal corner. And um, if you're in a different type of car, which is I would consider more like a traditional drift, which because you can still drift with Wisefab, but if you try and go in, you'd have a lot of angle, then you'd shallow out, or you'd be quite shallow around because you just didn't have um,
Yeah, but
the
we're
drive
talking we're
sideways.
talking a pro level competition here, not a grassroots event. So to me, your
Yeah, but
expectation on people is to have a proper,
a pro,
yeah, is to
yeah.
have a I shouldn't say a proper lock kit, a pro spec lock kit of some variety, which means having up over 50 degrees of angle in your front
Yeah,
end
so
lock kit.
that's what this is a high level comp. This is they're bringing in a judge from overseas, and it, the expectation, the cars. Everyone talks about how much better these cars are in D1 NZ compared to some of the other competitions around the
Oh
world.
yeah, and they're just they're no the cars are no slouches and the drivers are no slouches in that series compared to other series around the world.
Yeah. So looking at that, you think, or I would think that those guys should have cars that would blaze sideways. And that's where it's just like, yeah, it's good for the guys that can that don't have that sort of stuff and they can do it. But then it looks bad because they're not like the other guys and they don't have the same setup as those guys that have Wisefab or something like that where they can actually drive sideways around a corner.
Yeah, but I think that needs to be put into just an expectation. And there are a few calls that to me were a little bit funny, like the fact that the AE86, great driver, car looked great, did a really good job of the course, but clearly didn't have a knuckle setup like a Wisefab or anything in it. So it got a huge angle score, or like to me like a pretty big angle score for what it did
This
compared
is
to,
qualifying.
yeah, during qualifying compared to what other
Okay.
cars with Wisefab that had like at least another 10 to 15 degrees of lock on. Like the reality is you've made a choice as a driver to not have that setup. You're going to sacrifice that score,
That's
and
right.
somehow his score was higher than people who were hanging off more lock than
Yeah.
him.
It
And
was really weird and inconsistent. I thought,
yeah,
and the reasoning sometimes was
well
it
we
just
don't
didn't. There
we
was no consistency.
yeah, and we don't know the exact reasoning behind some of it. We don't know exact criteria. That's me being politically correct at this stage. But yeah, something like your angle, like at the end of that, unless there was different points of the track that he was carrying more angle or doing something more, but you've made a choice at that stage to show up with a car that's not capable of doing as much as other people. You want to be a professional soccer player and show up and run around in stilettos instead of wearing soccer boots, and you can't run as fast and you kick like an idiot because you're wearing high heels. Well, you've made that choice to show up and show up in that equipment, right? That's not everybody should have to. They shouldn't change the criteria of the game because everybody has to run at half pace because one of our players decided to show up and wear high heels while playing soccer. Like that's how dumb like making rules like that would be. Is that you've decided to show up that with a car that doesn't hang as much, isn't capable of hanging as much angle. Well, at that stage you're gonna lose score, especially on a track like that. As you said, like that's the sort of track where you can just hang off Wisefab for a long time. Um, or hang off PBM or whatever, but just hang off your big lock kit for a long time through that first one. I thought people weren't using as much angle as they potentially could have, but the entry, you know, being the way it was, you're sort of heading straight for the wall. You're not coming in on a nice angle to set it in a big sweep. You came straight at it. The other thing that I thought was a bit interesting, just from a driver technique point of view, was the number of guys who are or drivers, because there's a very good female driver in that series, um, driving into that corner really quickly, really gripped up, even in their, the gear that they've chosen to do that corner, and then trying to have to unsettle the car, and it sort of shallowed out a lot of cars, or in chase runs, straighten cars out really quickly because they struggled to get onto lock. And it's a problem that people have had on figure eight for a long time as well. But I think, with the amount of comps that were being run on it here, people got to grips with that really quickly. But I was surprised by the lack of people sort of power skidding in their chosen final gear for that corner, and just sort of dropping their hands and flicking the entry in. Um, I don't know if you
Yeah,
saw.
I remember. Yeah, I remember you commenting about that, but I thought I was picking more on the guys that were hitting the brakes actually.
Yeah,
So
but I think a lot of the guys having to hit the brakes too weren't unsettling the car early enough and aggressive enough to not have to pick the brakes. And then there was, yeah, a few other, well, one other in particular that to me a couple of times slowed up way too much in the lead, and then when followed a chase car that entered really aggressive and really quickly managed to keep up with them. So that to
yeah,
me was, yeah, not not the greatest. Uh,
no,
but yeah, I thought, yeah, not enough guys unsettling, especially with what you said. Like, I think people got caught up in the short run up and were so busy trying to get speed that they forgot at some stage that they had to enter the corner.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
true. Like, you sort of get like that. It would be like starting figure eight on the first up on the front straight. You would find a number of guys who would probably punch the fence because they're still trying to get up to speed before they enter. Um, Gets
Yeah.
a bit funny, and I, I didn't love the fact that they didn't have a designated start line, and dudes would like sort of transit around, pull up to the lights, and then reverse back as far as they could on the concrete.
Oh, is that what they were doing?
Yeah, to give themselves an extra
Ah,
5 or 6 meters of run up. I, I
yeah, okay.
I wasn't really a fan of that because it sort of um, yeah, to me you've got a start point. It's not a chosen, like, unless it's set in your criteria. Like, you can choose to do a short run up or a long run up, and then you can choose where your opponent starts or something. But yeah, not a huge fan of that. Um, our boy Aussie boy Matty Hill did very well. Uh,
Did you?
I think he was a little bit underdone in qualifying. I thought he was pretty good, but he didn't. He qualified down
Yeah,
like 16th or 17th.
I
Um,
didn't see his qualifying, but I saw his battles, and I thought his battle runs, like his lead runs, were quite good in comparison to a lot of the people that qualified higher. So
yeah, so yeah,
I
some
don't know
of
if that's bias or not.
it's probably a little bit biased, but uh,
Yeah.
without knowing exact criteria, again, it's hard to pass too much judgment. And he went against Ben Jenkins, who's top bloke and on his team, and they went a couple of one more times, and Matty got the win on that, and then had to go against the number one qualifier, and was really good. I think he'd won that straight away, and yeah, that was a really good battle, good showing from Matty, and then um, he had an accident in top eight where the lead car messed up. Well, sorry, Matty drove off track. Oh, sorry, yeah, Matty ended up messing up his entry and straightening out, and then in the last corner, he had managed to catch back up, and the lead car put it in the fence, and Matty followed him in and punted the back of him. Lucky for Matty, he'd only done damage to the door. It seemed like they gave the other guy a really long time to try and fix his car, and didn't end up being able to fix it. So Matty went straight out for top four, uh, and went against eventual winner Darren Kelly. Uh, I think you commented that you were actually quite impressed with Matty's chase. You didn't expect that chase to be as good as what it was going to
Yeah, I know.
be. Um,
Yeah.
and it was a pretty good
I,
chase. And then I think Matty made a mistake in his lead, or Darren was just a bit better. Um, I don't really remember that one so much because all I remember was his chase in the battle for third and fourth was just, yeah, phenomenal. Super aggressive. I also give props to the other driver for not being a bitch, and when he got tagged in the rear bar by Matty, and it sort of slowed the lead driver's transition down a little bit, but he didn't let himself spin or do anything like that you sort of see in other series around the world, where the lead driver feels a slight tap and then backs out of it and it's just like,
Yeah.
nah, fuck this.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
but
He done. And try and get or like you do a fake spin.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Matty ripped his rear bar off, and yeah, he made contact with more than just the rear bar. But props to the lead driver for just staying in it, and it was amazing, awesome battle. Will probably almost be one of the chase runs of the year for that series, I would say. Oh yeah, Matty overcooked it in the teardrop against Darren and put two wheels off in his lead run. I remember now he finished the run smooth, but for that whole teardrop section, he was pretty much two wheels in the dirt, just absolutely blazing. Well, not blazing, absolutely throwing. Um, yeah, absolutely throwing dirt everywhere. But also for those playing at home, we're in contact with um, we were in contact with his spotter throughout the event, and his spotter was a little bit upset with Matty after he told Matty that you've got another battle to go. It's only top three, but maybe Matty had forgotten because he had not finished the battle in the top eight because that's when the accident had happened. Matty proceeded to do a massive burnout,
Yeah.
leaving the track or waiting to go off track. Um, and we messaged Mitch and we're like, does he know he's got another battle? And he's like, yeah, I told him. He clearly ignored me. But then it looked like he did a pretty mint skid after the results too. So yeah, well done, Matty. That's 2 years in a row at the first round, putting it on the podium. So finished third last year and already in third. This is a call out to Matty. I know Warwick's listening. Uh, we want to get you on the show, so let us know when you're back in Australia and available on a Wednesday night. We actually want to talk to you. Like, so let's make this happen. Uh, Damien Cook said in D1NZ they call it a Hollywood, and again, it's against the rules, like flopping. But you can flop and say that it's justifiable that it upset the car because you could see it upset the lead car. Like it didn't transition as quickly because it had caught the car up a little bit, but the driver got back on the power and made it work. Where when that sort of thanks. Hey, Warwick Hill, we want to have you on the show